I guess in this equation, if we are to have a very long drawn sort of, whether it's high intensity or low intensity conflict, proceeding side by side with some sort of facade of diplomacy, then to my mind, I think the role of the US in the region becomes very critical because a lot of what Israel does and is able to do with impunity is because of the support that it gets from the US. And you would note, but just for the viewers, like the apartheid case in South Africa proceeded along similar lines, like as long as the US administration stood behind the white regime up until Reagan, it could get away with impunity, and things changed once the US withdrew its support. We asked this question to both Jeffrey Sachs and Vijay Prashad, and they had quite different views on this. Jeffrey Sachs was more optimistic that increasing increasing shift in American public opinion might be able to do something eventually in shifting American foreign policy. And Vijay Prashad, on the other hand, said that he doesn't see any withdrawal of the American empire from the region, and looking from the American response to the three soldiers killed in Jordan, it seems that Vijay was right. So his thoughts are along the lines that America is not going to withdraw from its region anytime soon, and then Israel becomes a very important strategic point for the U.S. empire. What are your thoughts about the situation?
Um, Israel obviously is a critical player for the United States because uh, it's the only uh, power in the region with which the U.S. has a common language, cultural language. When they go to Saudi Arabia, or they go to the Emirates, or they go to Bahrain, or they go to Egypt, or they go to Jordan, they're speaking in their minds. They're speaking to the seventh century, whereas when they're with Israel, they're speaking with their uh, college roommates. Uh, it's a totally different relationship. And also, there's so much intelligence cooperation and so much revolving door between the Israelis and the Americans. They all know each other on a first name basis. They're all friends. Um, and there's a belief, not entirely wrong, but not entirely correct either, that Israelis have the technological competence, the mental know how, such that they represent an entirely different breed than the so-called Arab allies. So, for those reasons, Israel remains uh, a fundamental factor in U.S. strategic thinking. Um, I don't know where that's going to lead us. The Israelis obviously want to attack Iran, and the U.S. is reluctant to take that step so far. Uh, and I don't know where that's going to go. I think the US is probably more realistic than the Israelis about taking that step. I think the Israelis are completely insane from not in a moral sense. When I hear people like Benny Morris, the Israeli historian, keeps uh, pounding those war drums to attack Iran, I really have to ask myself, are these people so completely detached from reality? Hezbollah will annihilate Israel. Israel's a tiny place. Ezra, the Hezbollah has a very high level of technical competence, both in terms of the armaments they have and in terms of their ability to use them. Do they really believe that they could survive a Hezbollah attack in the event that the US and Israel target Iran? I think that's completely nuts. Hezbollah knows every single vital nerve in Israeli society like the back of their hands. They know exactly what to target that will turn out to be terminal. So I can't even grasp, as Oprah would say, I can't wrap my mind around what goes through the heads of these people. When I hear people like Benny Morris, I ask myself, have you not noticed that you can't even inflict a military defeat on Hamas? That it's already 4.5 months and you haven't been able to successfully target a single Hamas leader in Gaza? That you don't even know where they are? That in this tiny, tiny, tiny parcel of land, this pinprick on the world's map, this grain of sand in the Sahara, with all of your super sophisticated spy technology and all of what's called human intelligence in Gaza, all of those supporters of the Palestinian Authority who are now your spies, that you don't even know where the hostages are. You don't have a clue where they are. And you think you're going to defeat Hezbollah and Iran? Or you think you'll use your nuclear weapons and get away with it? That Nasrallah won't understand that if you nuke Iran, Hezbollah is next, and he won't preemptively finish you off? I don't get these people. Now,
One,
I admit not having military knowledge, but certain things are pretty obvious. They've not been able to defeat Hamas. They weren't able to do so in 2008-9 during Cast Lead. They weren't able to do so during Pillar of Defense. They weren't able to do so during Protective Edge. And with no restraints whatsoever, none. And after 4.5 months, they've not been able to do it again. And you think you can take on Iran and the party of God? Doesn't make sense to me. We're in a very dark period. Because I do, as I said, I think Israel has a legitimate fear. I mean, maybe people aren't going to like what I'm saying, but I have to be honest about these things. There is now a view among the Arabs that Israel can be defeated. And Israel doesn't see any other option except to restore their deterrence capacity. And that means inflicting a military defeat on Hezbollah and inflicting significant enough death and destruction as to deter anybody from following the lead from Hamas.
do you see any change of attitude among the US allies in the Gulf with the recent
Oh, I'm sure they're rooting for Israel to win.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because any victory, any defeat or any even partial defeat for Israel, they see as a victory for what's called the axis of resistance. So they want, look at what's happening now. If you look at the countries that supported the South African intervention at the ICJ. It did not include Saudi Arabia. It did not. There was Egypt eventually came on board. Jordan eventually came on board, but the Gulf states, with the exception I think of Qatar, well, don't count me on that. Don't quote me on that because I'm not positive. They did not come on board. And Saudi Arabia was not there. As Christopher Gunnis, the former spokesperson for UNRWA, pointed out, it would be a fraction, excuse me, a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of Saudi oil revenues to replace the United States and the European powers in financing UNRWA. The total figure comes to $440 million. That's how much MBS spends on prostitutes in a weekend. Or prostitutes and liquor. On a weekend. Do you see them coming forward to replacing the US and the Europeans? It's nothing. It's small change for them, $440 million. They're not doing it. They want to see those Gazans starve. Absolutely. They want that defeat. Because if Gaza is not defeated, the axis of resistance will take credit for it. And they don't want that.
This is also very depressing in a way, isn't it? I mean,
Look, it's a very depressing situation. I said we're entering a dark period. And it's a zero-sum period. I did notice that in the Hamas counter proposal, they didn't speak at all about ending the conflict. They talked about ending armed hostilities.
145 days free phase of ceasefire or something, yeah.
Yeah, a full Israeli withdrawal, a humanitarian end of the blockade, a humanitarian
A
relief,
exchange
reconstruction, and everything.
and exchange of hostages.
Yeah, exchange of hostages for Israeli Palestinians held in Israeli jails. They had a detailed plan, and it was a good document because it showed these people they have knowledge of the ground. They know exactly what needs to be done, and they know exactly the sequence it has to be done in. But what was noticeably absent, because you have to recall, there's all this talk about what we're going to do the day after, and we have to resuscitate the two-state settlement, and who's going to come in and govern, and whether the Palestinian Authority is going to play a role. That was completely absent from the document.
Mm-hmm.
Totally absent. The only thing they were concerned about was the humanitarian side, the military side, the reconstruction side, but nothing about an end to the conflict. End to military activity. Military exchanges, but not to end the conflict.
Hi, my name is Ayushman. I, along with Jyotisman, have started this platform. In the last 2 years, we have tried to build content for the left and progressive forces. We have interviewed economists, historians, political commentators, and activists so far. If you have liked our content so far and want us to build an archive for the left, I have two requests for you. Please do consider donating for the cause. Link is in the description below. Also, if you are not able to do so, don't feel sad. You can always like our videos and share our videos to your comrades. Finally, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.